Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and while hot dogs are a beloved staple of backyard cookouts and baseball games and stuff like that, there aren't a lot of restaurant concepts, especially here in Omaha, that have centered around them. And there have been a couple that have unfortunately not panned out. But there's a guy who I think is changing the perspective on how we look at restaurants and hot dogs and how they come together. And that is my guest today, Ryan Berry. Based off this guy's food, his history, and the quick growth that he's had, I think that your hot dogs are changing the way that we look at things. He's the owner of Willie Dogs. Ryan, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Super excited to be here. Thanks for offering to bring me on and being so gracious with your time.
Of course.
Yeah.
So before we even get started, Willie Dogs started as a food truck and still operates as a food truck. So follow it on Instagram and Facebook. You'll see it moving around town.
Yep.
But as of recording, probably about 6 weeks, 2 months ago, somewhere in there, you also moved into the Inner Rail Food Hall. So people can go down to Exarban and check that out and experience your food in a sit-down setting as well.
Yeah, and a little bit more expanded menu too. Being that we're in the same place every day, we don't have to pack up a restaurant, multiple times a day. We've been kind of playing with the menu a little bit more and kind of expanding and doing some more fun things. So
I've noticed that because I went back and I looked at some of your menus that you had just on the food truck, and it was usually just maybe one or two styles of dog or something. But now you're getting to play around. You're getting to create different sausages, different topping pairings.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've integrated the pretzels, and you've got like the chili and cinnamon rolls pretzel. Like, how has moving into the Inner Rail allowed you to just kind of unleash your creativity in a way that you maybe couldn't on the food truck?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we say food truck because we kind of fell into the food truck circuit, if kind of a with the pint nines and cross ranges, the breweries, things of that nature. But really it's a hot dog cart is what we started with. It's a little tiny trailer. It's just one little steam table and 4 sinks. That's pretty much the whole thing. And so, trying to really flex those chef skills in a really confined environment is tricky. But the coolest thing about it is, kind of allowing yourself to work within parameters sometimes is quite a bit freeing. Because I felt in the very beginning, if I would have had everything at my disposal, it would have been really difficult to narrow in on really what our core product is and what we're really trying to accomplish. But now that we've been on the hot dog cart for a while and we, developed this hot dog, which is really the special thing is the dog itself. And it really got that core menu down, got a following with that. And now that we're at Inner Rail, we can kind of flex a little bit more, having a little bit more space. So
I don't think I've met anyone who is as passionate about hot dogs as you are. What is it about the hot dog that inspires you?
That's a great question, Dan. I have no idea. I have no idea. I think as most people, growing up I grew up in North Omaha, money was always tight and hot dogs were cheap, and that could feed a whole family pretty quickly, I think. I think that's probably where it started, But I don't know. I just like hot dogs. I like all things like that. I love Chicago dogs, love New York style dogs. And as much as I do love those, I kind of always got frustrated that Omaha kind of being like the home of beef and baseball, we just didn't have our own hot dog. We were just always kind of biting off the style of some other city. And I thought that was unfortunate. So that's kind of where the idea for Willie Dogs came from.
Now, I've heard you say that in other interviews before. So I'm curious, is your goal with Willie Dogs, is it to have like the Willie Dog be mentioned among the New York Coney, among the Seattle Dog, the Chicago Dog, stuff like that? Or is it to be more like when you come to Omaha, you're going to do things like you're going to get a Runza, you're going to go to the Drover, like you're checking those boxes, and a Willie Dog is on that too. Both.
That's what we're trying to do.
Small ambition.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think the first step, and hopefully your listeners can help us out, I think we should really try to focus to make ourselves the official hot dog of the city of Omaha. Let's start there. Yeah. I think, we are doing something unlike anything else that anybody's ever tried to do. As you mentioned in the beginning, there have been other, hot dog restaurants, some of them really, really awesome, some of them not as awesome. But I think what sets us apart versus any other chefs or company or restaurants that try to do this, is we started with the dog first. So it was less about what we're putting on top of it, and it's more about the dog itself. So this is an all-natural casing, handmade right here in Omaha, cold-smoked hot dog that you can only get at Willie Dogs. So I think starting with that just already kind of sets us apart. And so when we're thinking New York, we're thinking Chicago. I mean, we're talking about the brands at that point. You're talking Sabrett, you're talking Vienna. I would like the name Willie Dogs to be synonymous with you. If you want a dog that tastes like Omaha, you got to start with a Willie Dog because that's the only way to do it.
So, I love it.
Yeah.
So I want to give you an opportunity right now to tell us what makes a Willie Dog, because I think when so many people think hot dogs, they think delicious, but they also kind of want to turn off their brain and be like, I don't want to think about what I'm eating. This is mystery meat. I don't know where it's coming from. So take this opportunity. Let us know. What are we eating?
So you're right. In the very beginning, I mean, that was what a lot of sausages were made from, was what was there and what was available. And usually after many other, more prized cuts of meat have been had. We are certainly changing that. We like to say that I can almost guarantee you that the beef that goes into my dog is probably better than your family steak night, and I can guarantee that. We partner with Frank's Doysich Meats, and we have for a number of years. There's only a couple people that know the recipe to Willie Dogs. Myself and Thomas Doysich are among those. And so when you're already starting with, in my personal opinion, the greatest butcher shop in the world, and it's right here in Omaha, and we're starting with these guys that have been doing it for hundreds of years, took them our recipe. They were very receptive to it. And so you already know that you're starting with those really high-end cuts of beef. We do not say that it's an all-beef dog. Again, we don't have to be like anybody else just because that's what, New York, Chicago, or wherever else wants. Totally fine. Love those. But it's not an all beef dog because all the meat is beef. And it's high end steak cuts usually. But we use a little bit of pork fat as opposed to beef fat, just because I like the texture and the flavor. And to be honest, it tested better when we were testing it amongst all of our friends, because it took, a little while to come up with this recipe. And that's the one that kind of took the lead. So we take all those, mix with our own, seasoning blend. It gets put into a natural casing, and then handmade out. So we link those out, and then they get cold smoked for about 2 hours.
And what does the cold smoke do to it?
Yeah, so think of cold smoking as like curing. So it's cooking it, it's curing it, it's imparting a little bit of smoke flavor, but it's not like a smoked sausage. Like, you're not going to taste the smoke necessarily, but it's going to be cured by the smoke, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Now, to me, when I know I'm having a great sausage, I know it before I even taste it, because you bite and you get that snap.
Yes. Yeah.
And your dogs have, not just dogs, but all sausages, and we'll get into how you offer more than just hot dogs, but they have that snap. How do you get that? Where does that come from?
That's the natural casing.
There we go.
Yeah. And we're certainly not the only people to use a natural casing. However, the process that we have with Frank's Doysich Meats, allows it to go into that natural casing. That cold smoke kind of tightens up that casing a little bit and firms up all the the emulsification, which is all your sausage in the middle, or your meat in the middle, and so kind of firms all that up. Then when we get it out to either the food trucks, food trailers, because we now have a truck too, or in our rail, we steam those, and then that just kind of tightens up that casing a little bit more, plumps them up a little bit, and allows you to really pop through the casing. So, yeah.
Now, what I like about your menu is it's very customizable. You've got the dogs on one side, and then you've got the styles on the other side. So somebody can choose, do I want, the original Willie Dog? Do I want a bratwurst? Do I want a smoked Polish, or whatever special sausage you might be running at the time? And then you've got different styles where it could be, normal style with ketchup and mustard. It could have chili on it. It could be your signature Willie style, which we'll get into.
Sure.
But how did you decide on that style of service, kind of having those two decisions that a customer has to make?
Sure. So I think a lot of our menu decisions and menu design decisions within Willie Dogs really come back to how does this impact the customer, and how does this equate to quick service. If we back up into the food truck days, one of my biggest frustrations of food trucks, if you're at an event or something of that nature, is you order food and it may be 20, maybe 30 minutes before you get your food. Well, no, you're a food truck. Get the food out the window. That was always my philosophy. And so taking that kind of frustration and wanting to solve that issue on the food trucks, the goal is the food is being handed to you by the time you're done paying. That's just how fast we want to run. And we do the same thing within the restaurant as well over at Inner Rail. And so I think designing it in that way allowed people to just kind of come up and go, oh, this, and just kind of move through it. Kind of similar to like a fast casual style. You go into the Philly steak place and you pick your base and your protein and you kind of move on. And so I think kind of looking at menus like that and seeing what works and seeing what works for fast service while still being able to maintain the quality of food was the goal. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's get into... We'll get into the development of the Willie Dog shortly, but I want to talk about your other sausages too, because if somebody's like, well, I don't want to just get a hot dog, you can get the smoked Polish. You can get some type of bratwurst usually. Right now, as we're recording this, you have a burnt ends bratwurst on the menu, which just sounds so delicious.
Yeah.
I don't know why I've never heard of anyone doing it before.
Yeah, it's
but
exactly what you think it is. Yeah, it's a sausage made with burnt ends.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
It's really good. So that one, we called it the Maverick. So that's of course, a Rotella's bun, some barbecue sauce, that burnt end link. I did a coleslaw that was a little bit thicker, so it would kind of hold up on the dog, and then top that with some spicy mustard. And we called that the Maverick in honor of our UNO friends right over across the street there. So
I love it. Where does the inspiration for the different sausages come from that aren't the Willie Dog?
Yeah, kind of whatever we're feeling. I think that's where. I think some of my chef training that I got here, in Omaha, and just some of the creativity kind of comes through. But we take a lot from our customers and stuff too. We have a notebook that hangs in the back of Inner Rail, and it's just menu ideas. And so we'll just ask, or if you ever have an idea, you're like, man, this would be cool. Let's try it. If we can. That's where the autumn brat came from. That had some pumpkin puree and warming spices in it.
That's where the pizza one came from, right?
The pizza one came from a little 9-year-old kid, who him and his, I didn't know they weren't from here. They were just in town, but they came to Willie Dogs 2 days in a row. And so I looked at the little man and I said, hey, if you could pick anything in the world to put on your dog, what would it be? And I mean, without missing a beat, he yells pepperoni, which was not even in the top 25 of what I thought was going to come out of his mouth. But that's where it came from. And so that was a Rotella's bun with a tomato sauce, an Italian sausage, some crispy pepperoni, and a garlic Parmesan sauce.
Whether you've executed on this or not, what's the craziest idea somebody's throwing at you?
Okay, so I think this is just me personally, but we've done it many times.
Yeah.
But we have a good friend of ours. We'll call him the Boz. He'll know. But he calls it the Boz dog. And people eat it up when we do it, but I can't get my head around it. He likes to do our Willie Dog with sauerkraut and like nacho cheese or cheddar cheese, whatever we're doing that day. And I mean, I've never even attempted to taste it, but like it flies every time that we do it. Every single time that we do it, it flies off the shelf. And I don't know, I'm missing something in there, but that's like the craziest, at least in my personal opinion, that's the crazy one. But we've got a lot of cool stuff in the works right now. Right now we're, as of recording this will come out here in a little bit on our menu. We're going to do like a buffalo chicken kind of sausage.
Okay.
So it's going to be our Rotella's bun, some kind of a thicker buffalo sauce that we can kind of paste onto the bun, a chicken sausage that we're going to do some cracked black pepper and blue cheese in the sausage itself. And then we're going to do like some julienne carrots with a little bit of a ranch on top of that.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome.
Just kind of like a buffalo chicken all right there. You got your carrots, you got your ranch, you got everything. But we have some other stuff on the in the works, Reuben dogs, some other different, chicken sausages, because we're finding that we want to try to offer some things that don't have beef or don't have pork as well. So,
well, I mean, that's kind of the fun thing for you, especially now that you're in this new space, I'm guessing is, I mean, a hot dog it's kind of a blank canvas. It's
Most
bread
definitely.
and it's meat. You don't even have to have a certain kind of meat. It could be chicken, it could be pork,
Yeah.
it could be beef, and then you can top it with whatever you want. You can make different sauces. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, how fun has it been just to be able to experiment now?
It's a blast. It's an absolute blast. Again, being in the food truck circuit, like you can do it, but it certainly is much more difficult to have rotating specials. Because people are usually planning for whatever your menu normally is. When we're at like some of our regular spots, out at like Cross Train and Pint 9, sure, we'll get a little wild out there. But I think what's really fun about it is having a place that's consistent, where we can have our normal menu, but then also kind of branch out and do some other things. It's just exhilarating because we can kind of do whatever we want, within reason. We can't fry anything because of where we're at, but outside of that, we can pretty much do anything that we want. So, yeah.
Well, and I've talked with other restaurant owners about this. I think that this is something that's really important now that you're in a designated space. Like on a food truck, yeah, you can offer 2 or 3 menu items and that's going to be fine because people are in a place, they see it, they come to you. Mm-hmm. But when you're trying to get people to come to your place, it helps so much to have something new and something of variety, because somebody can go to if they went to Willie Dogs and they had, the 3 things that you have in your food truck menu, they'd be like, okay, I had those 3 things. Right. Those are good. Maybe I'll come back in a couple months and have them again. But if you're constantly putting out specials that are drawing people in and being like, oh, well, I was just there 2 weeks ago, but they got a burnt ends brat now. Right. I have to try that. So how important has it been now that you're in this physical space to be able to just create new things all the time and keep that interest of customers?
Well, I think it's it really kind of hits on 2 sides. Like me being a creative person and being a chef and just being a foodie myself, as much as maybe I dislike that term at times, but I think it's true. I think it scratches that itch of me always wanting to try something new, do something different, and really kind of flex some of those chef skills and be like, oh, I'm going to try this sauce or do that. And I think on the verse side of that, always changing, and having your core menu, but always having something new and having something fun, I think is a really great way to stay engaged with your customers and with your guests as well. Because to your point, if my menu doesn't change ever, okay, but how many times are you going to revisit that Facebook page or that whatever if the menu looks exactly the same? Now, on the verse side of that, if Willie Dogs in Arrayal is putting out a special every week or whatever the case may be, you're going to check back every week. At least we hope that you're going to check back every week and see what the new flavor of the week is or the day. And, so I think it allows us to kind of pull that thread through being, creative and being, culinary, just, I don't know, enthusiast, if you will, but pulling the thread through that, through our customer engagement as well, which is a huge part of what we do, is the experience and what it feels like to come to Willie Dogs, both as a staff and as a guest. So,
Chicagoans are famous for saying you can't put ketchup on a hot dog. You have... ketchup is on your menu. You can put ketchup on. Is there any condiment that cannot go on a Willie Dog, like just out of principle?
No.
You'll go anywhere.
Yeah, there's no wrong way to Willie Dog. No, you can do whatever you'd like. I've never understood the whole ketchup argument. I'm also not from Chicago. I'm from North Omaha. So in North Omaha, ketchup, that's what we use. Like, that's it. So I've often, gotten over the years... you can't have ketchup on your menu. And I go, cool. Well, that's like 60% of my market. So if you're willing to supplement that, then sure, we'll gladly take that off. We'll call it the ketchup tax or something. I don't know. But no, I don't think there's anything that can or cannot go on a dog. And I think it's a little ridiculous to say that ketchup can't. I mean, I know there's going to be people that are they're going to hate on us or hate on me in this, in the comments after this. I know it, but really, there's just no wrong way to Willie Dog, and it's again back to that experience and how it feels. If you want ketchup on your dog, put ketchup on your dog. Go for it. So,
speaking of whatever you want to put on your dog, we got to talk about the Willie style, because I would assume that this is just based off the name. This is your signature thing, so it's kind of like a horseradish based sauce, and then like sweet caramelized onions.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're
First
good.
of all, correct me, and then tell me how you came to this being like the traditional Willie way.
Yeah, kind of just stumbled into it, to be completely honest. So I've always made these onions at home, right? You know, you can kind of put them on anything, but they're just like a sweet onion. Some people will use like a name brand cola of some sort, and you know, kind of simmer some julienne onions down with those. And you can do that with many different dark sodas. They all come out pretty good. Us not wanting to partner with any major brands like that because we're a local focused kind of company. So we do these things called brown sugar onions. So we dice up some onions from local farms when we can get them from local farms. We just go through a lot usually. And then it's a little bit of butter, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of brown sugar. And we just kind of slow simmer them down so they retain a little bit of that texture. They're not, you know, hopefully shouldn't be super mushy. And just kind of a little bit still of that little bite to them. And then the sauce, we call it Willie Good sauce, you know, because it's Willie Good. Actually, my son named it that.
Oh, that's cute.
But yeah, we call it like a mild horseradish sauce. It's kind of our own signature sauce. Again, it was just something that I would make at home if we were having Polish sausage from Frank's Sausage Meats or just kind of anything like that. It's just kind of a mayo-y, horseradishy sauce that we dress up, and it's pretty darn tasty.
It pairs very well with the hot
just
dog.
kind of a mild spiciness, mild sweetness, neither one really overpowering, and I think it kind of melds well with the snap of the dog, and of course the Rotella's bread. So
yeah, the balance is fantastic.
well, thanks.
So I gotta get inside your chefy brain for a second here.
Fire away.
You were talking about the buffalo chicken dog.
Yeah.
So that's something that you're working on. Maybe you finished it by now. Regardless, it'll be coming out soon. Take me from the time when you conceive of this idea and you're like, I want to do a buffalo chicken bratwurst, and then until the time it goes on the menu. What happens in that space in between? How long does it? I mean, I'm sure this differs from dog to dog, but
Sure.
How long does it generally take? How much are you testing? Just what happens in that space?
Yeah. So in the beginning, with the Willie Dog recipe itself, there was months of like small batches to try to get it right. With some of the new stuff that we do, like the chicken sausage that's coming, or the autumn brat, or we did a jalapeno cheddar. We've done all sorts of stuff. It usually will start with a conversation with Thomas Doisich and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." He'll go, "All right," or sometimes the conversation starts on his end. Sometimes too, where he's like, "Hey, man, I got this idea." I'm like, "Cool, let's do it," and then. A lot of times, I would say most often it starts with whatever the protein is, and then kind of building from that. Sometimes it's reverse engineered, and like in the case of our pepperoni dog, it was like, "You want pepperoni? Okay." Well, then we ended up with a whole pizza dog, basically. But yeah, so I mean, it just kind of goes back and forth between him and I, within our staff too. We just kind of talk about all sorts of crazy ideas. We have this menu list in the back that's got. I mean, everything from like pepper jellies to like Reuben dogs, like you name it, it's on this thing, on this list. And so, yeah, usually it'll start with like a conversation. And then, like, for instance, with the chicken sausage, we've been wanting to do a chicken sausage for a while, again, just to make sure we have another option for folks. So we talked with Thomas, finally found a spot kind of in the menu schedule of where we could fit a different one in. And he's like, "Well, I've got this idea, cracked black pepper." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, some blue cheese." He said, "Blue cheese, all right." And then, a couple weeks later, we have, 50 pounds of whatever this new one is. And normally while that's in that process and he's working through that and making them for us, that's when I go into like crazy development mode. And I'm like, okay, just because it has blue cheese, it doesn't have to be this. It can be this. And, and I'll bounce that off the staff. A lot of our staff are young. A lot of them are in high school, and they're honestly some of the best staff that I've ever had working with me ever. And they're really creative, so it's really fun to like kind of watch them kind of branch out a little bit too, and not having the confines of like maybe the mind that I have because of my culinary background. They get to really kind of spread their wings, and so. With this one, with the chicken sausage, it just kind of kept going, and originally it was just going to be like a dog, the sausage with buffalo sauce, and that was kind of like where we were kind of at a stopping point. But then we thought, okay, well let's get some skills in here. Let's julienne some carrots down. Let's show the skill. Let's make a nice buffalo sauce, do a nice ranch sauce, in house, and chop some chives and just make it look real pretty and hopefully very tasty. So.
How fun is it to empower those kids? Because I mean, like, I'm thinking back when I was in high school, I was working at Hy-Vee, and I loved working at Hy-Vee, but I was a worker drone. I mean, I was scanning items, I was putting stuff on shelves. Nobody was asking for my opinion on anything.
Yeah, my first job was Baker's, so I know right where you're at. Yeah.
Yes, so we both come grocery backgrounds. But I mean, I can't even imagine at that age being asked, like, "Hey, I'm trying something out. What do you think of this?" Or, "Hey, we're making this style of hot dog. What do you think would go well on it?" I mean, that's got to just create such buy-in from those kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes back to kind of what I was mentioning earlier, where it's very important to me what it feels like to come to Willie Dogs, both as a staff member and as a guest. It is an experience. It is, at the end of the day, it's just hot dogs, but there's a lot that we can do in between that. And we focus a lot on what we call ownership mentality. So you may only be 16, 17, but if it says Thomas's Hot Dogs on the window, how do you want that interaction to go? You know, and for me, it's being open and honest and transparent with them. With all of my staff. I mean, we don't keep secrets. There's no hiding anything. Everything's right here, and we talk about everything. I think it's just important to illustrate that, you know, a phrase that we say constantly, you know, we're all in this together. Because it's very true. We're all in this together, and the more that we realize that and help each other out along the way, the better off we all are. And with something like having young staff, it's another important thing for me to make sure that whatever I'm doing for them is not only engaging them, but it's furthering their life in some way. So you go through culinary school and you become a steward of this information, right? Well, your job now is, yes, to be a chef and all that, but your main job is to pass that information along. And so, yes, it may be a little hot dog place, but they're learning all their knife skills. They're learning proper sanitation. They're learning proper engagement with customers, and just everything that goes along with it. And I think that including them in every piece of that, again, provides that ability for them to fall a little bit more into that ownership mentality.
I love that.
Yeah.
How did you get into cooking and culinary originally?
Yeah. I would say 100% my grandma. She's no longer with us, but like my grandma was, in my mind, the master chef. You know, now looking back, it was definitely a lot of like home cooking, soul food type things. But no, that was definitely where certainly the love of it originated. Was with her. One of my first business ventures I ever had was I would work for my grandma in the kitchen, right? And she would pay me in Andy's mints. And then I would take
That's
those.
good payment right there. It is.
But I would take those to school and I'd sell them for either 10 cents a piece or you get 3 for a quarter. And then I'd take that. I'd probably just go buy more Andy's mints. I don't know why I was doing that. But you know, that was like my first like foray into like, oh, you know, my grandma saying, okay, if you're going to be in here, go put an apron on and let's get after it. And so I think that's definitely where it originated was with my grandma, but it's something that's just kind of been omnipresent through my whole life. I've always enjoyed, you know, the dance of being in a kitchen. I like the flow of it. I like engaging with customers, and there's few things, at least for me, there's few things more satisfying than making something to eat and giving it to someone and having them just thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, there's just few greater joys in this world.
Now, you mentioned that you went to culinary school.
I did.
Most people's ambition coming out of culinary school is not to open a hot dog cart. And that's not to say anything against hot dogs or hot dog carts.
No, you're right.
I think we can agree on that. Where did the inspiration come from? As you're getting all these skills, I'm assuming fine dining skills and maybe even, you know, fast casual service skills, how did you hone in on my concept? I think what I want to do is hot dogs.
Well, so I did it a little bit unconventionally. So I went to culinary school after already owning my business for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
So because of just how me and our family, we believe, we try not to be, you know, the coulda, woulda, shoulda, you know, it's just a very much be present where your feet are type of family. And with that being said, there's always been like man, I know I would enjoy culinary school. I should have done it a long time ago, but you know, life takes you down a crazy path to get you to where you need to go. So I had already owned Willie Dogs for a couple years when I decided to go to culinary school. So this was just like a year or so ago. And so having already been in the business, been in industry, and knowing what my business is and knowing like what my growth strategy for it was, that allowed me to really like, kind of pick and choose what I feel is applicable to what I'm doing. With that being said, though, there wasn't an ounce that I got in that school that wasn't valuable in some way. So,
but you approach culinary school almost more from the business aspect and learning how to create a brand than necessarily.
No, even I had already created Willie Dogs, so like we had already been running and going for a few years.
Right, but to grow it.
Oh, to grow, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, quite all right. I just misunderstood. Yeah, so like I think what I got a lot as far as in terms of how to integrate that knowledge into the business was maybe just some of the back end processes that I was maybe already doing, but I could be doing better, like inventory management, costing, and things like that, and just finding some of the tips and tricks. I've kind of always equated going to culinary school, like when I got my first golf lesson, I thought I was a pretty good golfer. And then I had my first golf lesson. I realized all the things I was doing horribly, just horrible. Like I was absolutely horrible at it. And I think approaching it in that same way and just going in and humbling yourself and being like, yeah, I may be a business owner and it may be doing well and whatnot, but I'm really here to be a sponge and soak things up. And I kind of narrowed it down that I went to culinary school really for three things. And it was to, sharpen my skills, broaden my horizons, and network. And I accomplished all that. So, it was a great experience. And yeah.
Okay.
To the point where I would send anybody that works for me to culinary school and we would help pay for as much of it as possible because I think it's that valuable.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's go a little further back in the timeline then.
Sure.
When did the idea for Willie Dogs like arise in your head, and when did you say, okay, I need to make this a reality?
Yeah. I would say probably like beginning of 2019 is when it like maybe late 2018, beginning of 2019, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. Like, this is going to be cool. And like, I didn't have any intention of it being anything bigger than just like me and my truck and a little hot dog cart and like, come and get it kind of thing, my personality kind of got the best of me. And that's where, the whole branding of Willie Dogs and the specific dog recipe and all that kind of came from. But, so I left my full-time job in 2019 after kind of developing the recipe, developing the branding, developing the business, and all that. Because I went to business school years ago, and so that's where a lot of that initial knowledge came from. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing from a culinary side, but I had an idea of what I wanted the business to look like, And so, I left my full-time job in November of 2019. And because I have brilliant timing, our soft opening was February 22nd of 2020. And funny story about that, Danelle Taylor,
yes.
Right? Yeah. So Danelle and I worked at the big green building off like 108th and Dodge for a number of years, and so we'd known each other for a long time. So when I was finally getting this going, and he was kind of getting his thing going too, and he's like, "Well, you want to be on the podcast?" And I was like, "Sure." No idea what that means, but let's do it. I set the soft opening date in his driveway 2 minutes before I walked in the door.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, man, if I'm going to go on this podcast, then I need to like have a day in mind. And but I kind of also needed that to like push myself along, like if you don't tell me a deadline, I'm never going to get it done, But if you tell me that you need it in 3 days, you'll have it in one. Kind of like that's just my personality. And so I kind of had to set that date. And so, February 22nd of 2020 was our soft opening, if you will.
About, 2 or 3 weeks before the world shuts down?
Yeah, right in there. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that gave you a chance to have, a couple events, get your feet wet a little bit, and then, you don't want to have to take that big of a step back.
Sure.
But you could take a step back and be like, okay, what's working, what's not working, how do we hone this thing in?
You are exactly right. Like, that is exactly how it went. We did the soft opening, did a couple other events, a couple small caterings here and there, and then, everything hit the fan and the whole world kind of shut down. And my wife is a teacher, right, in OPS, and our son at the time was in kindergarten, so I kind of just like shifted gears, and I was, the lunch lady and the principal and the counselor and the janitor. The engineer. I was everybody at home while they kind of focused on school and work. And it wasn't until about mid-June, which again allowed me to kind of sit and rebrand things and really think about our process and our procedures, because again I have a business background prior to Culinary. And it was about mid-June I walked into the Next Chapter, the bookstore off like 25th and Farnham, and Shelly, the owner, is amazing. She's just a great person. We get to talking, and she's like, well, next weekend is Independent Bookstore Day. You want to do that? And I'm like, sure, why not? And that was kind of what led us just right back into the whole swing of things. So we did an Independent Bookstore Day. Somebody there knew somebody at Pint Nine Brewing who books the food trucks, and we got going over there with our buddy Andy, and then somebody there knew of another event, and it just kind of kept going and fell into that food truck world. And here we are, I don't know, 3 years later, something like that, 4 years later, and we're still rocking it. Now we have a brick and mortar, and we have multiple trailers and a little mini food truck now. So
It's exciting.
it's a blast. It's a roller coaster is the only way I can describe it. I just feel like I'm hanging on. So
I'm going to make you go back a little bit further in the timeline. I know that this recipe took 6 to 8 months for you to develop, and you're very passionate about this needs to be something unique, something distinct, that when someone eats this, they're like, oh, that's a Willie Dog. So what does that process look like? Because you said you didn't have a background in culinary. So what does the process look like of trying to create this new thing?
yeah, well, I think even not having a culinary background, like I had the flavor in my head. Like I knew what I was looking for. It was almost like in a way like recreating something. Like I had never tasted this before, but I was recreating something that does that make sense? I don't know if that's a great explanation or not.
No,
but,
it is.
But it was like like certain tastes, certain smells will take you back to certain places, and I think that's kind of what I was searching for. And so we originally worked with the other side of the Stoicich family. And it worked out really well because it was kind of over a Husker season for the bulk of it. And so a lot of what would happen is I'd make, have them make, or we would make, in our shop, 10, 15, 20, 25 pound batches. And I mean, it was super old school, like blue toothpicks here, red toothpicks here, boys, tell me which one you like better. And it certainly hit a point where it was less about what I wanted in it, and it was more about what made more sense for the market as a whole. And so that's honestly where the pork fat instead of beef fat came from, because it just tested better. So that's what we went with. But yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of back and forth, and a lot of like, oh, this came out too oniony or too garlicky. We need to change that, or can we change, what salt we're using? Because even that can, change your flavors. Can we change how long it's being smoked or cold smoked? Can we look at different size casings and just everything that would change it? And then we kind of, landed on the recipe that I thought was pretty darn solid. Just for some business reasons, we ended up moving over to Frank Stoicich Meads. And so I went to Thomas Stoicich over there and was like, here's what we got. And what do you think? And he goes, cool. Yep, I'm in. I'm like, I totally expected it to be a much more difficult conversation, but yeah, you're super receptive to the idea, and then we've just been rocking ever since. So
Wow. I mean, I'm so fascinated in the idea of knowing when it's right. Because, I mean, I can't imagine over those 8 months or whatever it was, how many different varieties you tried, how many different methods, how many different recipes.
Lots.
Yeah. a lot of hot dogs during that time. So I'm always
luckily I really like them, so it's good. It's like my favorite food. But
I'm always fascinated with chefs or creators when they reach that end point and they say, "Yep, this is it." How did you know this is it?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a lot like musicians. You can keep working on that song forever, but at a certain point,
you got to
just record it and be done with it. And I think that's kind of where we landed with Willie Dogs, where the things I was tweaking at that point were like, nobody's going to know a difference at this point. Like, and if you do, wow, you have a hell of a palate, like that's amazing. But, I think, once I got it to that point of like I was saying, I had that flavor in my mind. I knew the texture, which was the most important thing for me, was the texture of not just the casing, but of the hot dog itself. Mm-hmm. Once I kind of got that dialed in, And then there was a couple seasoning blends that were not so great, and some that I thought were really, really good. And this one was the one that kind of just always tested consistently. And so we stuck with that and went to Frank's Sausage Meats and said, here, let's rock and roll.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Now, it's a really big leap to have a full-time job and be doing this on the side to flip that and say, okay, stability, nope.
Yeah.
Don't need that.
Get out of here.
I'm doing this restaurant thing. But that's kind of what you like. If you had stayed in a full-time job, you would not have a spot in the inner rail right now. You had to go all in.
Yeah.
How did you know when the time was right where it was like, I got to try this?
Yeah. So what the dividing line for me was in the very, very beginning inception of what this now is, it was literally, I was going to just buy a used generic hot dog cart. I was going to buy cases of generic dogs, and it was just going to be what we call like boat money, like vacation money. Just if I want a new guitar, I'm going to go sell some dogs for a while or something. But I think what changed was when my personality got the best of it. You know, like I don't know that I would be like, this is what I do on the side. Like I just don't know how comfortable that was for me. And I'm like, oh, if I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do something really cool and really special because why not? You know, we have, in my mind, the world's greatest bakery right here, Rotella's. We have one of the world's greatest butcher shop at Frank's Sausage Meats. We have so many amazing farms and local resources right here that it kind of just seemed a no-brainer that, like, if you're an Omaha guy and you're going to do it here locally, like, let's do it here locally then. And so that's kind of where the idea for taking it from something that was just generic, just to, like, have extra money on the side, to having, you know, multiple trailers and the brand and the dog itself. So, yeah.
Now, you kind of mentioned how you got your start with the bookstore and then going to Pint Nine and stuff like that. And part of being a food truck owner or even just a, you know, hot dog cart owner is just being places. And people are there already and they're like, hey, I'm hungry. I'm going to go get that. So that's part of it. But I'm interested in just like, as you're establishing Willie Dogs as a thing, how do you get the word out?
You know, I think that is the biggest challenge.
Just being there?
Well, to being present in the consumer education part of it. It doesn't matter how many different ways I plaster on everything. Local handmade hot dogs, it's still at least once a day we get you just have hot dogs? I'm like, yeah, but
just
no.
a hot dog, man.
Come on, it's more than that. And I think a lot of it is just that consumer education. And I think that's also why the city is very fortunate to have folks like Danelle and yourself and Dave Zorko and others that are writing about food and talking about food and highlighting what Omaha really is, because it's not just a bunch of generic food out there. There's a lot of really awesome special things happening in this city, and a lot of it is just that consumer education and getting the word out there. And I mean, I will be 100% honest. In the beginning, it was difficult. You know, like our prices were different in the beginning. COVID wrecked us. A lot of things, you know, got wrecked with supply chains and stuff. But you know, even at the price point that we started with, there were people that were like, I'm not paying that for a hot dog. And I'm like, yeah, but let me buy you the first one. And then if that doesn't change your mind, have a great day. I'm glad I bought you lunch, you know, but I think it will. And so I think just holding tight to like what we were trying to do has proven to be the most successful and most consistent success over the last, you know, 4 years or whatever. There's been many times that we could have done a Chicago dog or any other number of things or prepared them in different ways or whatever the case may be. But I think holding tight to like the mission and what we were trying to create has been the most beneficial, because it's been consistent messaging since day one. You know, like our message has not changed. Our toppings may have changed a little bit. Obviously our menu at Interrail has changes constantly, but the branding and the message has always been the same. This is a local handmade hot dog that you can't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How'd the opportunity at the Interrail arise for you?
That's a crazy story, actually. So obviously I went to culinary school fairly recently, and I was part of the Culinary Team Nebraska, which is a competition culinary team. Shout out to them. The hot food side just took second in nationals in New Orleans last year, and my side also took second in the whole country. So I have a number 2 in the country medal, chef medal sitting at home, which is bizarre to me that even occurred, but it was a wonderful experience. But a fellow teammate named Wes on Culinary Team Nebraska worked with Interrail, and they had actually thought about doing their own hot dog concept. Which I would have been a fan of, like, go for it. I just like hot dogs. But Wes goes, hey, I know this guy. If you haven't heard of him, it's this guy named, Ryan. He does Willie Dogs. It's like its own hot dog or whatever. And a couple of people had heard about it, and one of them hadn't. And so we all kind of sat down and talked. Because originally they were just going to source our dogs from us, like, for their own concept. And it kind of became really clear within the first few minutes of chatting that, like, maybe this would be a good fit for Willie Dogs. We had already had the branding. We had already had kind of a lot of the process in place. And obviously it's our dog, and so we know what we're doing with it. And then talk about a roller coaster. It was like one of those ones that, like, shoots you out of the gate, because it was like, all right, yep, back and forth, some numbers here. All right, here's the contract, sign, and a week later, we did our grand opening. So it was like boom, 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 just hold on for the ride type of thing, and hopefully you did everything right and you took care of everything, and it's again been a whirlwind, but we've been growing every day over there and just been welcomed with open arms with everybody over there. There's not a bad bite of food in the house, and it's just been a really, really awesome little community we have.
So we've talked about how moving into the Interrail has allowed you to expand what you're doing culinarily, but how does it expand just your audience and the different people that you are seeing and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing a lot of your customers there are people who would never, and I include myself in this, probably wouldn't experience your food outside of it, because they'd have to just be at a brewery or follow you on social media or something like that. Now you're getting just walk-in people who are like,
what's that?
Willie Dogs.
Yeah.
I could go for that.
No, that's a great question. We do have our good core following, because of the breweries and stuff. And so, we say that we're going home when we go to Cross Train and Pint 9, because that's where we cut our teeth for the most part and spend a lot of time out there. And we still use Cross Train's Fairy Nectar in our mustard on our menu. And but I think what's really neat is, and this is something that was totally unexpected, because when I thought Interrail, I thought, kind of your working class people with like Toast and HER and all those other major companies right there, college kids, that was kind of my perception of the area. What I didn't anticipate was the number of people that are a little bit older. Even maybe a little bit older than us that, have been searching for that. Remember how I said I had that flavor of a dog in my head? These folks are searching for that same one that they had as a kid, that doesn't exist anymore because nobody does a handmade dog anymore. And so that's been the most surprising, like, customer base that I've watched grow at Interrail, just because I did not anticipate it. In all my research, that age group was not coming up high in my demographics. I just thought, it is. But with things like, again, you putting stuff out about us, and, KETV, KMTV, the World Herald, like, everybody who's been so just incredibly nice enough to put our name on their stuff. It's just it just keeps growing every day. But yeah, certainly that that demographic I didn't see coming, and it makes me so happy when they come up and they're like, "This is what I've been waiting for. This is the dog I was looking for," and I'm like, "Gotcha, I got you here." So that's been the I think the coolest part about it all. But certainly, every single day we're getting people that walk in that have never had a Willie Dog before, who have never heard of Willie Dogs. And we just kind of go right back to that consumer education piece that we've been doing since day one, where, you can go get a cheap dog, and there's certainly a time and place for that. In our family, we still will throw some of those, on a stick over a fire. There's not opposed to any of that. But we just like to think that we're a little bit of a cut above. I think one of the best reviews we ever got was very early. Someone said that it tastes like the grown-up version of the thing you loved as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was pretty spot on.
Put that on a T-shirt right there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in. We'll get you one.
So as we wind down here, we've talked a lot about your future aspirations for Willie Dogs, how you want this to be an Omaha destination, how you want it to be known among the hot dog legends, how you've grown in the inner rail, but getting there, what do you see as the future of Willie Dogs? I know it's you've grown so much over the last year or so, especially getting into the inner rail. That I'm sure it just feels like you're drinking from a fire hose right now. But as you continue to look into the future, how do you get Willie Dogs to that next step? What does that next step look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I wrestle with every day. Really, is what direction do I want it to go? You had mentioned something like hot dogs, kind of like a blank slate, and that's kind of how I look at the business too. Is it's kind of a blank slate because nobody else is doing this here.
No.
I take a lot of inspiration from Portillo's in Chicago. I mean, the guy started on a little hot dog cart, and now it ships worldwide. I'm not necessarily saying that that's where I see the end of Willie Dogs, but I certainly see it becoming synonymous with the city of Omaha. That's certainly our number one goal. If we have a mission goal right now, it's just to make that name, that dog, synonymous with the city of Omaha. I do see maybe some other locations coming at some point, and we'll just say that.
Okay.
So we're definitely not necessarily interested in franchising quite yet. I don't think that's anything that's in the near future, mainly because we're focused a lot on process right now and standard operating procedures, so that it's consistent and it's replicatable. Because again, if you have one here on Monday, you should be able to have the same thing on Thursday over there, and it should taste exactly the same. So that's a major focus of what we're doing right now, and Interrail is providing that kind of an arena to draw a template. Because we have the space to kind of stretch out a little bit, make mistakes, change things, and try to hone in on the best process. And so I think that in combination with the new food truck and a couple other the new trailers, I think we're just going to see a little bit of growth over this next year as far as location wise. And then moving outside of that, the goal would be to have maybe a few other ones around the city. So
okay,
yeah,
more stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, man.
Well, listeners or viewers, I mean, if you've been listening to us for 50 minutes or whatever, you've heard it. This guy cares about hot dogs. He's not just throwing a product out there and being like, this will be a way to make some money. No, you've put a lot of time and energy and thought and effort into this, and you've created a product that it'll make the skeptics believe. And I've been to several hot dog restaurants in Omaha, and I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that was good. I'm not gonna go spend $7 on it again. I would not say that about Willie Dogs. This is the type of place where even if you don't even get it dressed, you just get the hot dog itself. It's a fantastic dog, and I think Omaha would be proud to have that represented as the Omaha dog. So thank you, Ryan, for all the hard work you put into this business. Thank you for coming on the show today, taking your time. I really appreciate it.
I'm forever grateful, Dan. Thank you so much for your time.
Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.